Um, should we do a quick introduction, name and city, and then get started with our speaker, Susan Hinton. Susan, do you want to introduce yourself? She's the chair of the Plastic Pollution Prevention Committee.
Yeah, so I'm Susan Hinton, so I'm one of many Susans. So Susan H, if it gets too confusing. Um, and I am the chair of the Plastic Pollution Prevention Committee. So basically, I love to hike. My family's been outdoors. We've been outdoors people for a long, long time. I really wanted to give back, and I wanted to do something meaningful. And so I joined the Sierra Club a couple of years ago. I started out on the water committee, but I was barely on the water committee when I was asked to come and help with a plastic situation originally at Saratoga High School. I won't go into that. We can talk about that some other time. But anyway, that's how I came to eventually be the chair of the Plastic Pollution Prevention Committee. Oh,
Cool.
should I toss it to somebody?
Yeah, that'd be
Um,
great.
okay, Avni, introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi, I'm Avi. I'm actually a high schooler, and I'm working with Susan for my Girl Scout Gold Award project. Um, and it's an advocacy plan to spread awareness about like the harms of artificial turf. And for me, this issue is like pretty important and relevant to me because I'm an athlete, so I play on artificial turf a lot. So yeah.
You want to just name a person at random to go next?
Oh, okay. How about Hannah?
Sure. So my name's Hannah. I actually graduated in environmental studies this past June from UCSB, and I'm currently in Los Gatos and just looking around for ways to get involved with environmental organizations and work again. Oh, and I'll pass it to Christine.
Oh, you are muted, Christine. Yeah, can you unmute
There we
yourself?
go.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. I think I'm good now.
Okay.
I'm in San Jose and I'm a retired nurse and I enjoy the Sierra Club and the environmental groups and listening, trying to keep up to date with what's going on and participating where I can to try and make a difference as well in our environment. And that's pretty much it. Mm.
Pass it on.
Yeah, I'm trying to see the names and let me get rid of that. Uh, well, I don't have I guess Phyllis.
Okay. I'm Phyllis Brown. I live in Palo Alto. I recently retired from the English department at Santa Clara University. I've been a member of Sierra Club for many years, and I'm just now following my plan in retirement of getting more involved in various ways that I can help make the world better. Oh. And I will pass it on to Andrea.
Hi, I'm in Sunnyvale, and I co-founded Community for Natural Place Surfaces. I'm not a member of Sierra Club, but I've been working hand in hand with Susan Hinton and Sue on various artificial turf issues because it means a lot to me to get rid of that toxic junk in our on our planet, and just keep working city by city and hope to make a difference. Oh, I'll pass it on to Steve.
Hello. Hi, everybody. We are Steve and Nina Goodale. We live in Redwood Shores. We're a little wiped out right now. We've been under a real press, fighting development that's trying to go up behind us called Redwood Life. That is half, well, actually, it's all biotech, half lab, half office supporting lab, and they want to build out the area behind us right next to the slough with going from basically 1 million up to 3.3 million. And they're in their final, it seems like their final kind of crush to try to get it done. And we are tired, but we are very happy to have happy to know other activists, happy to talk to other activists. And with that, I'm going to pass it to, let's see, how about Christine Talmati, unless she already went.
You already went.
Dang it. Nancy Tierney. There we go.
I am Nancy in Pacifica, which happens to be where Steve and Nina are from. I've been with the chapter for maybe a half dozen years, got involved with ESP, first environmental stewardship program, and have been a fairly regular participant in the Sustainable Land Use Committee and Climate Action Leadership Team. Not that long ago, also started up a Pacifica group to deal with our geography, which is threatened by both sea level rise and hillside erosion. Also involved with Third Act, which is a group started by the environmental writer and activist Bill McKibben, and it involves over 60 people, as in age 60, working on climate and democracy. And then I guess the last thing I'm working on, the update of our climate action and adaptation plan here in Pacifica, which we're presenting to City Council in 2 weeks. And I will pass. Well, Shruti, should you go?
Yeah, sure. My name is Shruti from San Jose. I've been a Sierra Club member for several years now. I'm the 30 by 30 task force coordinator, the ESP program coordinator, and also, I guess, on the XCOM this year. But yeah, this has been a wonderful program just to get involved. So yeah, please, get to know us if you have any questions. I know I see a lot of you are already, getting involved in different projects, but whatever brought you to this program, we're here to help. So yeah, please feel free to reach out. And I guess we have James here, our chapter director. He couldn't join our first call, but was hoping to have a welcome and introduction. But James, if you'd like to, yeah, just quickly introduce or whatever you have to say. You always have nice things, great things to say. Yeah.
Thank you, Shruti, and thank you to all of y'all that are attending, and those of you that have already been helping the chapter. Many of you are great inspiration to me and to our staff. I'm the director. We have 5 staff, and our whole purpose is to help support and promote and advance the work of the volunteers. So thank you all for attending, and thank you for your contributions.
I think, yeah, if you can pass it on, Sue and Susan haven't gone, but yeah, we all are just going through quick introductions.
Yeah, Susan, would you like to go first?
Sure, I'm Susan Desjardins. I was a presenter at the last ESP on Bay Alive, so I'm a retired volunteer with Sierra Club and am currently the chair of the Bay Alive program, which was the topic last month. So thank you for coming back. And on to Sue.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Sue Chow, and I have been working as an activist leader in the Sierra Clubs for about 15 years. I started the ESP program with help from lots of people, including Susan Desjardins and Shruti here, along with Gita. So, I've been involved in quite a few very interesting campaigns. Um, so, that's what keeps me going is just, the opportunity to do meaningful environmental work. Oh, and I live in Palo Alto now. I lived in San Mateo County for a long time, so I'm quite familiar with San Mateo politics as well. And that's it.
Okay, great. Welcome. I guess, yeah, we've gone through everybody. So if we can get, started with our program for today. And yeah, so this has been, such, I mean, I won't go into the details. So Susan, yeah, if you want to just start off how this, the committee started, I mean, you already introduced that, but yeah, if you can share your presentation too.
Hey, here we go. Okay, so I'm assuming everyone can see this. This is the title slide, and it basically states the mission for the Plastic Pollution Prevention Committee, which is to reduce and ultimately remove unnecessary plastic products known to harm the environment and public health. Pretty much everything I'm going to say today applies to all plastics, but I'm going to have an emphasis on plastic and petroleum-derived products that are outdoors. So this is what I'll be covering. This is the first slide, and I realize it's pretty busy. There's a study from the University of Stockholm that came out at the very end of 2024. They were hoping to influence the global plastics treaty that the UN was working on. Unfortunately, the treaty didn't happen. The effort's ongoing, but nobody's quite sure where. In any case, what the Stockholm University researchers did, they did a huge review article on plastic research that's been done over, a very long period of time, a decade at least. And what they discovered, they found surprising, and probably many people will. They found that plastic pollution, especially in the form of microplastics, the kind that float around the entire globe, worsens every aspect of climate change. So this slide's a little bit easier to look at. It's boring, but it's got the information. I'm going to go back. Oops, sorry, forwards to that. I'm going to do a little bit of reading just to give you an idea of the scope. I'll spend a little bit more time on this slide, and then I'm going to go more quickly through some of the other slides. But they found that microplastics in the air, in the water, and also in tissues of animals. First of all, it increases global warming, and that's largely due to the pulling the petroleum out of the earth, specifically to make plastic and synthetic rubber and other synthetic plastic kinds of things. And also it worsens ocean acidification, puts more CO2 into the ocean. That reduces the carbonate ions available for organisms that have shells, like oysters, clams, sea urchins, coral, etc.
You have something warm.
Yeah.
Susan, if you could you put this in the
My-
presentation mode, if you don't mind, so we can
I'm
see.
sorry, what was that?
If you can put it in the presentation mode right
Oh,
now.
I'm sorry, I did it. You're right, I didn't. I thought I had that already up, but I will fix that.
And then it went away. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I'm good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for noticing. I did
I'll
not.
share it with you if you want.
Okay, and
I'm sorry, can I ask, can folks mute? If you're not Susan, mute yourself. Thanks.
I don't know. Hold on. Oh, I'm not muted. Hold on.
okay, so the problem with so a lot of plastic has chemicals that are added to the plastic because the plastic by itself wouldn't be very interesting. So to make all of the kinds of plastics that we're used to seeing, you have to add a whole suite of chemicals. And so it's the microplastics plus the chemicals that are the large problem. But even the microplastics by themselves can change the flow of water and of dirt and mud just by being in the soil or being in the water. And that affects the immediate ecosystems around them. When it changes water flow in the air, it can worsen storms, it can slow them down, it can dump more water, give the storm a longer period of time to act on the ground it's covering. So I think it alters hydrological performance, which is sort of something I just already said. It can enhance through its chemicals, especially, and through chemical interactions. So the chemicals on the plastic also interact with the air and with the water, chemicals in the water and the air, and from other mixed products and plastics that happen to be up there. They form new chemicals, many of which we have no idea what they're doing. But we do know that some of them are ozone depleting. So there you go. It pretty much impacts everything. So this is a graph showing, whoa, microphone fell over. This is a graph showing plastic production over time. It's an exponential graph, which means it's doubling every so many periods. And as you go towards the right, it's doubling faster and faster. Way back in 1950, there was hardly any plastic produced. By the time you're getting up to the period between 1999 and 2016, that's 17 years. It doubled in that period, and it will double again from 2018 to 2033. So that's the period we're right in the middle of, and that's only 15 years. And if you keep going, you can see it doubles faster. So as I mentioned before, plastic production emits greenhouse gas, and most of it's emitted right when the petroleum is pulled out of the ground. In 2019, there were approximately 2 billion metric tons of CO2 put into the atmosphere, which accounted for approximately 3% of all greenhouse gas emissions. So that is apart from deforestation and large land disturbances like large development projects, because those far and away affect CO2 in the air more than anything else. But 5% of everything that's left over is nothing to sneeze at. And because plastic production is doubling, by 2050, the plastic growth is forecast to emit somewhere between approximately 20 and 30% of all greenhouse gas emissions. So that's going up as well as the plastic production. And we're not even talking about greenhouse gas emissions from the use of plastic or during disposal. There are two types of plastics in particular that in 2019 accounted for a little close to a quarter of all the plastic produced. So that's polyethylene, different forms of polyethylene, and polypropylene. Those happen to be the primary plastics in plastic turf. And I'll talk more about the University of Barcelona in a bit. So this is a graphic that really just sort of shows how plastic gets around, especially the small bits, but also the large bits that might, blow out of your hands. I've been using the example of a candy wrapper. If you open a candy and you eat the candy and the wrapper blows out of your hands and it blows down the street and you don't have a chance to grab it. In sunlight, it'll break into pieces. It could get stuck in the ground. It could go into a storm drain and wind up in the creek and then eventually in the ocean. In the ocean itself, it can get tossed through currents and wind up on beaches all the way, out in the middle of the Pacific. Plastic is a substance that spreads very easily. So this is a little bit of evidence about how it spreads and where it spreads to. In 2024, some researchers actually measured dolphin breath exhalations, and they found microplastics in dolphin breath. Remember, dolphins are mammals, so they breathe air. And then over here on the right, this is an article from Greenpeace and a very nice graphic showing how ocean action The wind blows on the water, it creates waves. You've got these mists and things that are being blown around, and when there are microplastics in those mists, they just get tossed everywhere. And some of them go up into the air as well as down and around into the water. And as I mentioned in the first slide, microplastics are found in tissues. So they're found in plant tissues, they're found in microorganisms in the ocean, they're found in all sorts of animals and insects, and they're found in people. So last May, at the University of New Mexico, some researchers looked at slides from mortuaries, and they found microplastics in pretty much everywhere they looked. These ones are obviously kidney, liver, and brain tissue. They found that, so polyethylene, I mentioned, is one of the most produced plastics. It's also plastic that's outside in artificial turf. And they found that the proportion of polyethylene, micro and nanoplastics was greater in brain samples than in the liver or kidney. So the same group of researchers they expanded their study, and they just published this article in Nature Medicine, so a premier journal. And what they found was that in brain tissue in people, that from 2016 into 2024 through 2024, the amount of plastic in brains rose by about half. So I'm sure we were all alive in 2016. So however much plastic we may have had in our brains in 2016 is, sort of statistically about 1.5 times as great right now. So nobody exactly knows, it's been correlated with dementia. People with higher dementia have been found to have more microplastics in their brain, but that's a correlation. It's not causal, so we can't say for sure that it's happening, although the suspicion is that microplastics and their chemicals can cause inflammation, and that can lead to any number of problems. So this is a United Nations Environment Program slide, and it's a slide that talks about diseases that are either known to occur or highly correlated to occur when you're talking about chemicals mixed with microplastics. And you can see it runs a pretty broad gamut, from cardiovascular disease to cancer to asthma, to reproductive outputs, to problems in fetuses and slow growth. So I'm going to start here in the upper left. These sort of clear, small, squishy, translucent beads. That's a type of polyethylene in its state just after it's produced. And it's not very interesting. This doesn't look anything, for example, like artificial turf. It's also considered flammable because it'll melt at the same temperature as a just struck kitchen match. So you've got to add chemicals to this or you wouldn't have artificial turf. So over here you can see there are these other beads that have coloring and other chemicals, and they get melted and mixed together. And so you need something it's outdoors, so you have to keep the sunlight from breaking it down, because sunlight can break plastic down faster. You have to reduce flammability. You have to, as I said, add color. You have to manage water. If you've got lots of water from rain or from snow or something on the artificial turf. And it's not just the top layer of green blades that we're used to looking at. There are these other layers, especially on sports fields. There are at least 3 layers of plastic on almost every sports field. There's a pad. It's sort of like a gym mat that lies underneath the so-called carpet layer with the green blades. And usually somewhere down here, there's something called a geotextile. Geotextile is a plastic that's also a weed barrier. They usually poke a lot of holes through it so that moisture can pass through it. And over here on the right, remember I said you needed to add chemicals. So not all of these chemicals are in every single instance of artificial turf. The thing about artificial turf is the grass blades, at least, are fairly easy to make, and they keep changing the recipe. Even if you just have a single company, just Field Turf or just Tenkati, one batch to the next, the chemical composition might change. All of these chemicals, these PFAS chemicals up here and these other, so there's more than 30,000 UN so-called chemicals of concern. And this is just a small portion of them, but these have all been found in artificial turf in one sample or another, just as all these PFAS have been found in different samples. Okay, this is, remember I said something about the University of Barcelona. In 2023, researchers at the University of Barcelona went out and they collected water samples from different places off the coast of the ocean, from the surface down to the floor, and they also collected samples from the top down to the floor in riverine areas where the rivers empty into the ocean. They took all of their samples back to the university, and they carefully sorted through everything and tried to figure out what the source of the plastics, happened to be. They had a really tough time identifying chemicals. So microplastics are defined as being less than 5 millimeters in length, and obviously nanoplastics are an order of magnitude smaller than that. They had difficulty identifying all the chemicals and everything in some of the really small pieces. So they focused on everything above 5 millimeters in size, and they had a much easier time sorting that out. The first thing they found was that there was, in half of all the samples they collected, they found artificial turf. They also, when they looked at the weight and everything, the chemical composition, they found that 15% by weight of all of their samples was artificial turf. So that's quite a bit of just artificial turf. Okay, so I'm bringing this slide up for several reasons, but one reason is I'm doing sort of a segue from microplastics and chemicals to the heat island effect. When you spread plastic out over the surface of the ground over large areas, and so here, this is the Twin Creeks Sports Complex, which is in North Sunnyvale, right on the coast. And we've got 3 different versions of the same area right here. So over here on the right, we have a satellite heat map. So this was taken in 2017 by the Landsat catalog, and it's, satellite, not catalog. And you can see that the hottest place in this whole area happens to be where the Twin Creeks Sports Complex is. This is a graphic of the Twin Creeks Sports Complex. These are 10 baseball fields. So baseball fields are usually between 3.5 and 4.5 acres in size. So it's a really good guess that there are at least 30 acres of plastic out there. This is a Google map right here. And this is just showing exactly where the Twin Creeks Sports Complex is. This area out here, that's the bay. But one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up is that the hike that we were talking about is actually going to go from the Twin Creeks Sports Complex. So here, we're going to walk over here. We're not going to stay very long because once you look at what's there and understand what's there, you really don't need to be there longer. But we're going to look at that, look at the bay right there, and then we're going to walk in this direction because right next to the Twin Creeks Sports Complex is Sunnyvale Baylands Park. It's land owned by the county and run by the city of Sunnyvale. It's a mixed use park. So there are playgrounds. Thankfully, they don't have turf. They have wood chips and play structures. There's also a big grassy field for running around and flying kites. But there are trails that go around the edge. And I know that there are supposed to be burrowing owls there. And we're going to look at, the sort of parts of the natural ecology that we can find when we walk through the trails that are there. So that's we'll probably walk about 2 miles, so not really far. And you can bring the children if you wish. Okay, so now we're getting back to plastic more directly. Manufacturers' warranties so this is artificial turf over here. That's the Fair Oaks fields. So there are approximately 6 acres of artificial turf over there. This is a warranty by Field Turf, and you can see right here that it says that they believe the warranty is in effect if at least half of the blades remain on the turf. So they know those blades are breaking off. So, if they're breaking off, where are they going? Well, if it rains, they might be washed into storm drains. There are storm drains all along this walkway, and the storm drains enter directly into this channel over here. And that channel, this is only 2 miles from the bay. That channel leads directly to the bay. Okay, this is a little bit busy, but this is about recycling, because if you have a field and it only lasts about 8 years, then you need a new field, which means you have to get rid of the old field. So in the United States, this is a graph showing plastic production in the United States over a period of, from 1960 to 2018. This is in 2018, this is where we believe that everything went. So the total generation was, approximately 36 million tons, and then about a whole big chunk of it went directly to landfill. This is something so-called advanced recycling. I'll talk more about that later, but it's basically high heat, and it throws a lot of pollution around itself. And this is what is actually recycled. So you'll notice that in 2018, that figure was 9%. Well, it's actually a little bit under 9%. After 2018, because the United States sent its plastics overseas to, for example, China, and then the Chinese promised to recycle it. So you can say that everything you sent to China was included in this number. But China quit accepting plastic from the United States and from Europe. And this number is currently under 5%. So that's 4% less than they were saying was recycled in 2018. So you have to ask, well, when you sort of look at all of this, there is a gap. And part of that gap is because of stuff either doesn't make it into landfill because it gets blown into the air and carried around, or because people do things with it that they're not supposed to. These pictures were taken by parents who followed flatbed trucks leaving Saratoga High School a couple of years ago when the football field was replaced. And so they didn't know where the trucks were going to wind up. It turned out that the trucks drove to San Martin, and the drivers got out of the trucks and they promptly put all of these rolls of artificial turf down into a field, and then they left. The parents actually asked them, like, well, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And the truck drivers very understandably said, well, we were just paid to drive out here and leave this stuff here, so that's what we did. Okay, so here we're going to get into a little bit of nitty-gritty about recycling, because there's a lot of dust thrown up where plastics producers will tell you that they recycle things, but what they call recycling isn't what an environmentalist would call recycling. What an environmentalist would call recycling is you start with a product, and then eventually it wears out and you take it apart, and then you make a brand new product just like the first one. So that would be truly circular if that happens. Another kind of recycling that might occur is the product itself decomposes and it's compostable. In other words, it can be safely put into the soil and will help organisms grow and plants and everything else. Neither of these types of recycling, which is why they're in quotes, are either of those things. So a mechanical recycling is sort of what you might think just from the name. They have to gather, sort, clean, they shred it, the stuff into these little bits. Sometimes they'll shake them around so they produce beads, and then they use low heat to melt that plastic, and then they shape it into a new product. They could just shape it into pellets and then put it on trucks and send it someplace else. The problem is that when you follow through this process, each time you do, the polymers become weaker. So you can't keep doing this forever. You can only do this process for one chunk of plastic a couple of times. And if you start out with a product that is a higher level product that has a lot of structure to it, then you're going to have to use the result in a lower level product. So eventually you wind up at a place where the only thing left to make is a single-use plastic, like a plastic bag, or maybe, you know, a plastic brick or something. And when those wear down, there's nothing left. You know, you just pretty much have to landfill it because they're not useful anymore. The other thing is that they mix this lower grade stuff in with so-called brand new virgin plastic. So they're still continuing to produce plastic. So this is not truly, this is the leakiest circle that you can imagine. Let's just put it that way. Now, advanced recycling is also called chemical recycling. It uses heat, and that heat can be anywhere from approximately 500 degrees Fahrenheit up to, you know, 24 to 2500 degrees Fahrenheit. In the absence of oxygen, they often add chemicals. They might add acids, or they might add basics, you know, which is the opposite of acids, chemically speaking. Or they might do something called steam cracking, where they use extremely very high pressurized steam in the absence of oxygen to break the polymers apart. So this will break the plastic polymers apart. It's a carbon hydrogen chain. But if there's PFAS in there, which is a carbon chain with fluorine molecules attached, those carbon fluorine bonds are so strong that this isn't going to have a big effect. So when you're done, you're still going to have all that PFAS floating around if there was PFAS in the product to begin with. Moreover, some of the chemicals that they use for this process will interact with other things that are in the plastic, and they'll create new products. Some of that stuff winds up, they also tend to use water to like cool everything down at the very end. So some of the pollutants from the process wind up in the water. Other pollutants are like go off in the air above the production area. You wind up with this process creating more pollutants than were created when you originally made the plastic. So this is worse than bad recycling. It's sort of the antithesis of recycling. Okay, these are just a few things that you can't really recycle. I probably don't need to go through them. Oops. I will say that just this one down here in the bottom, that was something that washed up on Bonnie Doon Beach. We went out, I was out on a hike, and we all stood around and tried to figure out what that mess was originally. And we really could not do that. The best guess we came up with was, well, maybe it was a mattress that was on a boat that went overboard, but we really have no idea. Okay, so there are other kinds of plastics outdoors. So we know that besides artificial turf, which is, besides being put in athletic fields, is put into landscaping, sometimes into yards, or it can wind up on playgrounds. There's also synthetic rubber, which is a petroleum product as well, and it is just as bad as artificial turf. But besides those, if you've driven out of the urban suburban area past farms, I know when I drive down to Monterey, I see plastic sometimes that covers entire hillsides. That's a practice that's called plasticulture, and it's actually an approved agricultural practice. And there's a set of best ways to do this, supposedly. Now, these pictures were taken down near Cal Poly, and these are actually strawberry fields. So there's these tiny little strawberry plants that are growing between the plastic. This is also called weed cloth. Its purpose is to allow the plants you want to grow, and then it will presumably keep the plants you don't want growing from growing. And it's fairly effective in that use. You can actually reuse this a couple of times, 2 or 3 times, But after that, you get a lot of dirt and you might get rain, you might get other things happening to this. So you can't just keep doing that forever. And then this is the result over here. They have to cart it off. It's got dirt in it. I don't think they can clean it and do either of the types of recycling we were just looking at. So they probably just put it into the ground. Now, Cal Poly, because they have an agricultural department and because they were curious, decided to use very best practices in the field. They found the fields around them, including the university fields. And over a period of years, they did soil sampling because there had been some research that showed that plastic getting into the soil degraded the soil and it lessened the nutritional value of plants that were grown for food. And they didn't look directly at nutrition themselves, but they did find that the quality of soil, even with low levels of they say macroplastic, so that means larger than 5 millimeter fragment accumulation, worsened the soil everywhere that they looked. Said all farms exhibited surface soil contamination and declines in soil quality. But you don't have to go to a farm to see weed cloth in action. You can just walk around the block probably from where you live. And you might see yards covered with plastic with holes poked in it for plants. So that's what it might look like originally when it's first put down. And then on top of that, people might put wood chips or soil or a combination, and then they'll leave it alone because they think they're done. But eventually it's going to wind up, the plastic, sort of makes its way into the soil underneath and also above the soil, it resurfaces. So it doesn't really do what the people who put it down think it's going to do or want it to do. So this slide is about, so in California, I won't say that we have the laws that we really need when it comes to chemical or plastic pollution, but we have stronger laws than many states, and especially we have stronger laws than states directly to the east of us. So when there's something that can't be recycled in California, it winds up going elsewhere. And in this case, so this is talking about soil and garbage, as particularly radioactive, Superfund kinds of stuff. That gets wound up taken to places like, for example, here in Arizona. And there are a couple of very large landfills in Arizona, sort of away from everything else, except, of course, they're not away from everything. And one of the things that they're not far away from happens to be reservations. So reservations for Native people. So this is a little bit of sort of justice issue right here. To pair with this picture, I tried to find landfills that would accept plastic in California. And it was a very frustrating exercise. So I decided to take up the search engine suggestion that I use artificial intelligence because they have that option now. And the AI, spit out all these names. And I went and looked at several of them. And it's like, well, yes, they each take some kind of plastic, but they don't all take every kind of plastic. For example, there might be a landfill where there's a specific line that says, you can bring exactly 4 or fewer tires to our landfill if you need to dispose of your tires, but you can't bring carpeting. Or there might be a different landfill that'll say the opposite. So when you ask field turf or a tenkate, the plastic turf producers, when they come and pull up a field and you say, well, what are you going to do with this? Where are you going to take it? First of all, they'll tell you they're going to recycle it, but they won't really give you the details. And second of all, they might say something like, oh, we're going to take it up to our place in Oregon where we're going to get rid of the infill. And then we're going to take the result back to, and then in one case, they actually name a place in California, Circular Polymers, to have it like shaken into beads. You remember that mechanical recycling thing I showed you? So that's the only place in all of California that says that it does this. It's not permitted to do that. Circular Polymers only has a permit for indoor carpeting. However, there are no laws in California preventing the so-called recycling of artificial turf. The thing about circular polymers is that it seems not to be active all the time. We've had a couple of groups of people who've tried to go knock on the door, to like say, hi, we're here, we want to tour the plant. But they've been closed. So they're not fully in operation, which of course leads you to ask, well, then what really happens to the artificial turf? And that is a mystery. And of course, I always laugh because people say, oh, if we didn't have artificial turf, what would we use? It's like, really? You really have to ask that? Well, plants. You're outdoors. There are plants, and if it's landscaping or in a yard, you don't have to even have grass in your yard if you don't want to. There are many easy care alternatives, like, for example, these poppies up here. Or if you are at a park, you might want grass anyway, because you can't poke your volleyball poles down into artificial turf. You're not supposed to poke holes in artificial turf. So you need some grass field someplace. And there are a lot of California plants. California plants have this great advantage. They're used to the California weird cycles where you get years of drought or you get years of heavy rain without, being fully predictable, because it's not a regular cycle. It's very irregular. And California plants do very well in California. And many of them are drought tolerant. But if you need something where there's grass, you don't have to like dump pesticides and herbicides on it. And you don't need to dump synthetic fertilizers or anything. You can organically manage it. You can sustainably organically manage it. You can farm a sports field, and it's been done. There are places in the eastern United States that have had this practice in place since as early as 2002. And we also have nice videos from Australia where they redid a field. They redid a grass field. They redid it so well that a FIFA level Premier League team plays all of their home games on that field. And this is something I just found out about in the past week. There's a brand new study, 2025, that shows that biodiversity is going away, not just at the species level. For example, you might say, oh, the monarch butterflies are endangered, perhaps, and then you worry about all the monarch butterflies. But it turns out that within species, genetic biodiversity is is lessening too. So the genetic material within a species is more the same than it used to be. And it's not only worldwide. If you have a particular area, like a large open space, they have found that the diversity in the species that are in a local area is declining. So this is a great reason to want more plants of all kinds on every field. And I believe we are now, yes, at the end of my presentation. So if anyone has any questions, I'd love to answer them. Christine, and you need to yeah.
I read an article today that was talking about, Trump has gone on and said plastic is back, and he wants to get rid of the rules on plastic straws. But the article I read today was talking about the paper straws versus the plastic straws and the chemicals and the PFAS that are in the paper straws. And when they studied the plastic straws, the chemicals in plastic straws, and what goes on into the other kinds of straw availability that is out there, they think that plastic straws are actually less harmful to the environment than all this stuff with the paper straws. And that the only truly straw that you can do that's not harmful to the environment are your stainless steel straws. Because there's even something with the bamboo straws that isn't very good for the environment either. And they said the real argument really isn't the straws, it's the single-use plastic. And it talked about what you talked about, that they haven't been able to get a stronghold globally about reducing single-use plastics, the efforts that have been tried and to reduce single-use plastics really hasn't happened yet. So I think the real answer is we don't have the replacement for plastics. And I don't know if you watch Landman at all, if anybody's watched that series, but that's been very interesting. And he went on about in Texas how they have the windmills to provide the power to the oil companies to run the oil wells and all that stuff. But he went on and he talked so fast, I couldn't tell you, but he talked about all the things that go in to making those landfills, all the cement structure that has to go in underneath, everything they have to do to bring in those landfills. And those windmills, and he basically ripped them apart, that they are not environmentally friendly at all.
So there's a kind of analysis that started, and I'm not remembering the name of it. There's a formal name for it. It's supposed to be a complete analysis, but you can look this up on Wiki, and even Wiki says that this particular kind of analysis, it's supposed to encompass everything from pulling stuff out of the ground, et cetera, has been criticized by the best academics for being incomplete. In other words, they're saying it's complete, but it's not, and also for showing a deliberate bias. So one of the challenges is understanding whether you're reading something that's a high quality study or you're hearing a podcast from somebody that really actually knows what they're talking about or is simply throwing terms around. So I tend to look, so the reason that all my references are university references and from really well-acknowledged journals is because that's the best stuff. Those are the best people who know the most. And if it's an artificial turf person who goes out and hires some lab, and the lab does a test, and the test always comes back in favor of the artificial turf, you start asking yourself, well, they're paid by the artificial turf folks, so maybe they have an agenda.
Maybe, but this wasn't talking about artificial turf, and this wasn't people with an agenda.
When it comes to straws, it's like, yes, there's PFAS, there are chemicals everywhere throughout the earth. That's true, but they're not equally everywhere. And why would you want more instead of less? And you still are stuck with the fragmented bits of plastic, and you really don't need those. So if I'm going to have PFAS with paper or PFAS with plastic, paper is better because it will compost.
Right, but it's still talking about the fact that we don't have suitable replacements or enough replacements of things going on to
I don't believe
use
that.
plastics.
No, I don't believe that, and we have evidence that that's not true. Phyllis wants to say something. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah. I want to start with an observation and then a question. About a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, I was across the street from where I live at Cubberley playing fields, which includes both artificial turf on one playing field and grass on another. Yes. And I observed people raking up all of the bits that were coming off of the artificial turf and bagging them up. And I have no idea where they went, but I have bad feelings about where they probably went. So it's just an observation that these artificial turf playing fields have a lot of debris that's coming off of them. as well as the other dangers that go to the children who play on them or the adults who play on them. So that's first the observation. And then a question. So is Palo Alto brags about its recology, and I carefully recycle plastics. Um, is that plastic actually getting recycled, or is that all a lie from Palo Alto?
So that's a little tricky because when they pick that plastic up, it has to be sorted through. So you remember that one of the slides, talked about sorting and cleaning, because you can't recycle mechanically anyway, something until you've thoroughly cleaned it off. And ideally, you need plastic that's uniform. So you need plastic of the same type. So if you're going to actually recycle styrene, polystyrene, for example, like the foam stuff, then you want to make sure that you've got just polystyrene. So they sort through the stuff, and the stuff that is, obviously clean or cleaner, and the stuff that they know exactly what it is, and they can therefore put it in the appropriate pile, stands some sort of chance of being recycled. Now, if it's polyethylene, it might be only mechanically recycled, which means it's downcycled, just like I talked about.
Yeah.
So there are very few plastics that, if they're in really good shape, they can be, recycled. So one of those actually is polystyrene. The thing is that polystyrene sheds. It's like, if you've ever been near any of the foam stuff, you know how it sheds. It just breaks pieces off all the time, and you can't capture all of those pieces. And styrene is actually, it is dangerous. Polystyrene, not quite so much, but styrene breaks off from polystyrene, and you can't keep it from doing that. And styrene is, in fact, dangerous to people and to animals. So what I'm trying to say is you're not going to get 100%. And I think that a percentage of less than 5% is going to apply to the stuff that's picked up by recology.
Oh, my.
On the other hand, some of it will get recycled.
Yeah.
My question is in regards to a service that has been provided in certain cities, Ride Well, and I believe that some people are familiar with here as well. I think it was mentioned in the past. And so have you looked into, or are you aware of this type of work, what they do, what they're picking up? And is anybody actually within the Sierra Club, or are they legit? I have them for over a year and a half, 2 years, where I have this like this kind of uh it's like a guilt, what is that called? A guilting type of a guilt-free type of recycling option, but it's the different type of plastics. Just
Yeah, so another problem with recycling is that because the original plastic it's cheap in a way that we pay for later. It's just that we pay for it in illnesses, not necessarily in money, because the original plastic stuff is incredibly cheap. And this is true in industry as well. So in industry, if you make a product, it's cheaper to make it with brand new plastic than it is to go to the trouble of finding the stuff that's recycled. And then, of course, you have to probably drive it around or put it on a train or something to get it to where you're going to produce. And that's a headache, and it costs money. So even when you've got things that are recycled, they don't necessarily have things that are done to them. Now, Ridwell, its business model is that it asks, so if I'm a consumer and I say, oh, I want to be the best consumer I can be, so I'm going to join Ridwell, and I'm going to carefully pre-sort my plastics, and I'm going to clean them myself. I'm going to wash them off and make them clean in the sink. And then I'm going to dry them out because they can't really be wet because they'll contaminate other things if they're wet. So they have to be dry. They have to be clean and dry and sorted. And then I'll put them in these little containers, that Ridwell can come along and pick up, and I pay Ridwell for this service. So I'm helping them in this fashion and I'm paying them, and then they come and pick this stuff up and they take it off. And then we address your question right at that point, which is, is it in fact recycled? And I offhand don't have the answer to that question. And I wish I did.
Thank you.
You're
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I have that Ridwell too, but I sometimes wonder if it's a whole bunch of like greenwashing, like the other TerraCycle, and because there are all these specialty recycling programs, and we never know, even though you're doing all the sorting, but I don't know where it exactly ends up. But yeah.
So, according to the state of California, because Cal Recycle publishes this stuff every year, the material that is most recycled and most likely to be recycled is actually paper and cardboard. So if you're giving them paper and cardboard, then there's a really good chance that it will be recycled. Andrea.
Yeah, I volunteer and we have a big recycle bin. And so I was curious because people put saran wrap in there and plastic bubble stuff and all sorts of junk that to me is obvious. It just doesn't make sense it can be recycled. So I actually called the company and they go, well, yeah, we take everything and it goes to this facility, this huge facility, and it's all mechanically, automatically sorted as to what we can actually recycle and what we can't, and what we can't goes to landfill. So basically it's smoke and mirrors because when I tell my friends, why are you buying those single-use plastic water bottles? Well, because my city gives me a barrel that says recyclable, so I put it in there and it's being recycled. And I said, oh no, it's not really being recycled. So I think that the consumer, just like all these lawsuits that are happening with, was it Pepsi or Coca-Cola, where they're pushing that they're recycling everything. I think it's smoke and mirrors, and we just need less plastic in the world. That's it. Just stuff that's not essential.
So you're absolutely right. So the one I think of it as sort of a fallback position. So one advantage to a landfill, if you want to think this way, is that at least it's like all in one spot, as opposed to, for example, on Midway Atoll. One of those photographs that I had earlier that I buzzed past was showing Midway Atoll. So out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, without a population of people, but plastic garbage nonetheless accumulates there. So if you can grab the plastic before it winds up in the water or in the air or wherever, and you can stuff it into a landfill, you have it in one spot. But of course, you can't landfill forever. And in fact, in the Netherlands, I saw an article that I used Google Translate to translate into English so I could read it, that was actually talking about the fact that they no longer have capacity for products that are laden with PFAS in certain plastics because they've just simply run out of landfill. The Netherlands is not a country that's that big. And eventually that will happen to us as well. I saw another hand up. Yes, I know.
I don't want to capture everybody's space, though, that this question is more to do with things that I'm part of the San Mateo High School drama parent volunteers, for example. And I'd love to support San Mateo High School, right? And I'm sure that it happens in other high schools as well, where basically when there is a show, when there's a performance, whatnot, they want to be selling things in order to donate and to bring more money to a program. And without fail, every time one of the required, it's actually a required donation is to bring bottles of water. Now, it hurts me every time And I didn't know how to even explain, like, it was like, well, we're in a period where like we know that this is just a single-use plastic bottle. Most of the students are already educated to bring their own bottle. And so I don't know if there is anybody has tips or suggestions or like what else can you do where the parent committee itself is like, yeah, we need bottles of water. And
So Valley Water itself had this problem. I went on a tour for their recycling plant a couple of years ago, and so they took us on the tour and showed us how they clean the water and everything. And at the very end, they said, "Well, here is fully recycled water, and it's in a little plastic bottle." And um, and talking to them, I guess that they had not considered, and now they do, and some cities do this sometimes. Just like when you're in a hotel and you're down in the lobby and there's that great big thing, it's usually glass. It's usually glass so you can see through it, but they can also be aluminum, right? I mean, you don't have to see what's inside there if it's water. And then you bring a paper in a hotel lobby, you have a paper cup and you take it and you just get water there. So you could use paper cups or, you could bring your own, obviously reusable water bottle. Um, just like they have those stands now in a park that are just for water bottles. They could do this at a school too. I'm sure that those schools have very large containers that they put liquids in, maybe for coffee or tea, but they could also put water in them. And then they could either supply, small paper cups, or they could ask people to bring their own reusable water bottles with them. So that's one thing. Um, there's another parent who sometimes comes to some of the meetings. Her name is Poonam, and she's been very actively trying to go to different school administrations to get them to encourage using reusable products. She hasn't had a lot of success, but she came up with an idea of her own, and apparently it's working for her. She went and got a whole bunch of aluminum trays, the kind that have like several dents in them, so you can put fruit in one and, a salad in another, and a big area for something large, like, I don't know, a casserole or something. So she got a whole bunch of those, and then she got a whole bunch of similar metal cups. They're not huge, but they're fairly tall, and you can put any kind of liquid in them that you wish, including wine or beer if you want to, or water or whatever. And then she also got silverware to go with all of this. And now she is sort of a combination of lending them out and also renting them to her friends who have, backyard events or events in parks. And this is working for her. And I don't see any reason why there couldn't be more of that.
If you find, I think, yeah, there are the zero waste groups. If there's some around you, maybe you can join and try to get more people together, or at least in your school. So, I mean, we have that. I mean, there are like few groups just focused on zero waste, and like for things like, even for my kids, like science project, they asked for like plastic bottles. I just posted a message, and instead of going and buying something. So there are groups, mostly I think on Facebook, like the Buy Nothing, and yeah.
Yeah, you can
Look
also, if you're at a large school, you might be able to find enough parents to sort of have your own swap, where you need cups and they need plates or something. Yes, Phyllis.
So I've been browsing while listening because I really want to find something positive coming out of this. And is TerraCycle reliable? So they say that they are recycling guaranteed. Of course, we don't necessarily trust that, do we? Do you know about TerraCycle? Is that I think that the other thing that's come up, I forget what it's called.
There's
Yeah.
one recycle. I'm not sure that it's TerraCycle. I'm not browsing at the moment. But I know that the city of San Jose was going to use a larger recycle service. And I'm not recalling which one. But I went and investigated it at that time. And it turned out that they were actually sending stuff to India. And so I went and tried to look up the companies in India that were taking the stuff to see what they did with it. And I really couldn't figure it out. But so I'm not sure that TerraCycle was this company, but I would want to know more. I would want to dig into that because I'd be a little suspicious too.
One way I can dig in is I'm pretty sure Santa Clara University has used TerraCycle, and they have a very strong program for sustainability, and I can check with them to see whether they are using TerraCycle and what their research on that has found out, and that I can share it back to this group. I'm really very unhappy that my confidence that Palo Alto had a strong ecology program is probably not based on reality. I just am devastated by that.
I think it's important to get this, to get accurate information out there because, most people, they make assumptions because these spots are provided for them, that say that you can, recycle, your used napkin or whatever. And they really do need to know in order to understand the scope of what's working and what's not working. Andrea.
I just wanted to say that that recycle company that was handling our recycling where I volunteer, I actually spoke to them and I said, I'd love to see your facility. Can I come and see how you separate and where everything goes? And the answer was no. So I don't think they want us to really see and understand what they're doing. It's all just take my word for it. And, I'm called a recycling company. And Phyllis, even your efforts to try and dig deeper, good luck with that, because we've tried that with artificial turf recyclers to really find out what they do with it. And it's extremely difficult.
Oh, yeah. Anna.
So that's what Andrea said. A few years ago, I went to the Recology here in San Mateo. They actually have open programs. They used to have, I don't know, but I took my son at the time for one of their open days, and I think even Foster City, Audubon elementary school, they had like a day tour to see the recycling facility where they are going, they're sorting. It was actually a very impressive tour. And so I'm not sure if the Recology in San Mateo is still doing that, but I was actually pleasantly impressed. That at the same time, though, they do have like kind of a separate entrance where if people want to get rid of furniture or certain things, they can just drive their garbage, their things that they cannot get rid of, like big bulky things, and you pay a certain amount and it just goes into not sorted, no nothing. You see TVs, you see furnitures and sofas and Christmas trees, and so I don't really know. I mean, like it's a different section of their ecology, so maybe somebody does go and sort things out. But I was impressed from the Recology in terms of like the big facility, like they were welcoming public to see how they're sorting things out.
Well, if you go onto the California Cal Recycle and you dig into the pages to find out like what gets sorted and how it gets sorted, there are materials that can be sorted out and reused, and you can find those. So there are some successes. Again, that tends to be, paper products, cardboard, or it can be some construction material, like they might break up concrete or big blocks. Now, concrete is a problem for a different reason. Don't need to go into that right now. But just the fact that it's a certain kind of physical material makes it easier to reuse. And plastic, because of the polymers and the way that it weakens over time, and plus all the chemicals that are mixed in there, That's much more problematic. And so, so the first question sort of, I talked to several groups of high school students at Bellarmine High because I was invited. And so I tried to get them as an exercise to consider, what's a necessary plastic and what's an unnecessary plastic. It's like, well, maybe if somebody has a surgery and they need a heart stent and you can't put a steel straw in somebody's artery, so that you don't really have an alternative at the moment. That might be considered necessary. But, again, if you're looking at a straw, I mean, very few people need straws. Most of us can drink out of a cup without a straw, right? Whether it's hot liquid or cold liquid. And even if you carry it around in a car where it might slosh, there are lids that don't have straws that allow you to sip out without a straw. So I would argue that straws are not needed. And when they're absolutely needed for some purpose, using a steel straw is not a bad idea. Because if somebody really needs it, they're going to want it, and they're going to want to make sure that they have it whenever they need it. They're not going to want to run to Safeway and grab more. But I had a really good experience this past weekend. So I really like to cook and bake, and I'll cook and bake whatever, if my friends have, odd things that they can or can't eat, then I try to do my best to come up with recipes that meet their requirements. So I have a friend who is gluten intolerant, and I wanted to bring brownies. So I found a recipe that called for Japanese sweet rice flour, which has no gluten in it. And it's a New York Times recipe. I wanted to buy exactly the right rice powder, or flour. So I went to a Japanese grocery store near me, and I went and found this in a box. And so I brought the box home, and I laid out all the other ingredients, and I opened up the box, and I was so surprised because when I opened up the cardboard box, the only thing that was in there was the rice flour. There was no liner. There was nothing else, just the box and the rice flour. And that made me ridiculously happy because when I open up my pantry and I look at things that are in there, even if they themselves come in cardboard, when you open up the cardboard, there's almost always some plastic insert in there somehow. So I don't know, Shruti, do we want to say any more about the hike or
Yeah, I guess, we had, yeah, it's 8:30. I didn't even realize. Thank you so much, Susan. I think, yeah, I definitely learned a lot more. The artificial turf is a big thing. I hate it. Hopefully we can do something in our city. So for the action items, do you want to quickly talk about that, Susan, before we have an outing? I'll post the details in the group chat, which is going to be on February 22nd. And as Susan mentioned, it's going to be covering both Sunnyvale, Baylands Preserve or Park, and then also walking over to the Twin Creeks. So I'll post that, but for this session, if you want to, maybe Susan, if you want to talk to the action item, and I can
Yeah,
send.
I'm going to share one thing just real quickly here. Get to the right one. Yes, okay. So the action item is to send an email to your city council. So we're all from different cities. So the idea is to send something to your city council. And this is a format that we're going to send out to everybody. It's very simple. So you need to find out the email addresses for your city council. And then you basically can use this template of filling in the areas between the brackets like dear city mayor, vice mayor, and council members. And then there's a paragraph, a couple of paragraphs, and there's a link. It's a gift link to a Washington Post article. So everyone should be able to read it. And then the third paragraph is basically put your own personal reasons for writing this letter here. The more personal, the better, you know. And then the final paragraph is basically, you know, keep our city green with plants, and then your name. So hopefully this is a pretty simple letter, and I'd like to encourage everyone to do this and you know, I don't know, pass it out to your friends or something if you wish. So that's the action item.
And the details on the outing, I just posted in the chat, but then tomorrow I'll be sending an email, and then also the sample letter that Susan has prepared. I thought it was brilliant. And yeah, I guess, yeah, I mean, did any of you just quickly, I wouldn't have a chance, and I know we're out of time, but did any of you have any success with the previous action items for Bay Alive? We had, you know, just reaching out, learning about sea level rise within your city. If anyone wants to share quickly. Or did you guys attend, I mean, the Santa Clara County Wood, the turf ban? I mean, of course it was.
I sent a letter, and then after that, after I read what Betty Duong, I found another article that talked about her and the way she voted and why. I wrote her a letter and I never heard back. Because I also, there was in the news about, I think it's San Jose City Water. One of the water companies is suing about the plastics that are in the that are in the water. And a couple companies that they're mainly going after about the plastics in the water. So I told her, what point does it make to sue the water companies about the plastics you're finding in the water, yet you want to okay plastic turf that is adding plastics to the water? Anyway, I never heard back from her.
Okay.
I signed the letter that Sue has formulated, and shared it also with a few friends.
Yeah, so Shruti, that template will go out in an email.
There were a lot of information in that letter that Sue had.
Oh.
Yeah, but it was after last meeting, and I'm pretty sure that she can still provide it if Sue is still in the meeting. And if not,
Yeah.
I guess I can also forward it.
Yeah, you're talking about Sue Chow?
Yeah, I believe Sue Chow. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you have to say which Sue or Susan.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, but that was about that's I think about the Palo Alto, I believe it was East Palo Alto, turf. They were trying to. You're muted, Susan.
Oh, I'm muted. Sue, are you still here? That was Bulware Park?
Don't think that Sue is still here.
Maybe she stepped out.
I am here.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, what were you asking about, Ina?
Remember the letter that you asked and shared with before, during that previous meeting? We actually also talked about that during
Right.
Yeah, so that's the letter I was sharing about. It was very, you have formulated a very good pointers there with a lot of information about artificial turf and all its
Yeah.
the devastating effects of it. And so I
Yeah.
think that in addition to the twin phase, this plastics pollution, there's a new date coming out, right?
Yeah.
Information.
So yeah, this is a long-term struggle. I mean, it's a war. I mean, you know, because there are so many interest groups that are opposed to anyone who wants to ban artificial turf, you know, and they have a lot of friends in local governments. So I mean, it's very difficult. And it can be demoralizing. But we'll just keep on, soldiering on.
Yeah, I keep trying to remind people that this isn't just about sports fields. I mean, when I walk around neighborhoods, people put this in their yards, and it makes their yards hot. The heat, plus the imperviousness, the fact that you really water, even if they poke holes through it, water sheds from it. It doesn't really go through those holes very well. You're basically killing off the soil underneath there. You're baking it, for one thing, when it gets hot. And then the stuff sheds. There's an installation that's about 2 years old in a corner of one of the blocks that when I walk around here. And now I can see little things like springing up and starting to like shed off of it. And I'm not even sure that the person who put it in is aware of that. I don't know if they even go out there and look. So there's yards, there's landscaping, there are playgrounds. I mean, little kids especially, you don't really need, or I don't know why people would want to put artificial turf under a swing set. That just seems weird to me. And yet it's done.
Because I don't think that there's enough awareness at all in the public. Like,
Yeah.
you just don't know about that. If it's not, there's no interest of enough organizations to spread out the word and educate the public into how harmful and devastating it is. And
Yeah.
like he's right, like, yeah, there's lobbyists, like there's, you can start talking about cow milk. I mean, there's many other things that there's enough lobbying where people either don't want to learn about that or it's inconvenient.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very pretty and it looks very nice and you don't need to mow it. So
there's a question about dogs at the outing. The Baylands doesn't allow dogs. So unfortunately, no. Twin Creeks supposedly doesn't allow dogs, but several of us who've been there have seen people bringing dogs, but I don't think that's a great idea myself for the sports complex. So unfortunately, dogs can't come. I have a dog too, so I understand why you would want to bring your dog.
Thanks for that update. I love bringing my dog. I don't like to go for hikes without my dog, but I also want to obey the rules, and I understand why dogs are not allowed in some open space areas.
Okay, wonderful. If there are no more questions, is everybody ready to say goodnight? I mean, this could go.
Yeah.
I think there's
Yeah,
so much
Christine, can I talk to you for a few minutes after
Yes.
we adjourn? Because this is in response to what you said earlier. So
Okay.